Picture this. It's September 23rd, 1968, and in a small Italian monastery, something extraordinary is about to be discovered. As the Capuchin friars tenderly prepared Padre Pio's body for burial, they found something that would shake the Catholic world. Beneath his rough brown habit, against his stigmatized chest, lay a simple piece of brown cloth that he had worn for over 50 years without ever removing it, not once. What was this mysterious object that this holy man treasured more than his own life? And why, when asked about it, would his eyes fill with tears as he whispered, "This is my guarantee of salvation"? I'm talking about the brown scapular of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And today, I'm going to share with you something that could change not just how you live, but how you die. Because here's the thing most people don't realize. Wearing this simple piece of cloth comes with promises so powerful, so incredible, that even death itself cannot break them. Have you ever wondered what really happens in those final moments? When your heart stops beating and your soul leaves this world, where exactly do you go? The uncertainty can be terrifying, can't it? But what if I told you that millions of Catholics around the world carry with them a sacred promise from the Mother of God herself? A guarantee that they will never face eternal damnation. Now, before you think this sounds too good to be true, let me tell you something. Padre Pio, one of the most beloved saints of our time, staked his eternal soul on this devotion. He never, and I mean never, took off his brown scapula. Even during his surgeries, even when doctors needed to examine his stigmata, he would fight to keep it on his body. Here's what's going to blow your mind. There are 3 sacred promises attached to this devotion. Promises that come directly from heaven. The first one protects you from hell itself. The second one, called the Sabbatine privilege, is so powerful it can cut short your time in purgatory. And the third one? Well, that one deals with the moment of your death in a way that will give you chills. If you're wearing a brown scapula right now, or if you believe in the protection of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, write in the comments, "Queen of Carmel, protect my soul." Your simple act of faith might be exactly what someone else needs to see today. Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to share with you has been confirmed by saints, popes, and countless souls who have experienced these promises firsthand. This isn't just about a piece of cloth. This is about your eternal destiny. Let me take you back to a moment that changed history forever. It's July 16th, verse 1251, and in a small monastery in England, something incredible is about to happen that will echo through eternity. Saint Simon Stock, the superior general of the Carmelite order, is deep in prayer. His community is struggling, facing persecution and uncertainty. He's been begging the Blessed Virgin Mary for a sign, for help, for some kind of divine intervention. And then, in a vision so vivid it would be burned into his memory forever, she appears. But here's what most people don't know about this apparition. Mary didn't just hand over a piece of cloth and disappear. She spoke words so powerful, so definitive, that they've been changing destinies for over 770 years. She said, "Receive, my beloved son, this scapular of your order. It shall be a sign of privilege for you and all Carmelites. Whoever dies wearing this shall not suffer eternal fire." Think about that for a moment. The Mother of God herself, the woman who said yes to bearing the Savior of the world, just made a promise about your eternal salvation, not a suggestion. Not a maybe, a promise. Now, when Padre Pio learned about this promise as a young seminarian, something clicked in his soul. Here was a man who would later bear the wounds of Christ, who could read hearts and souls, who had visions of Jesus and Mary throughout his life. And yet, he clung to this simple brown cloth like his life depended on it. Because, in his own words, it does. But there's something even more incredible than that first promise. You see, Mary didn't stop there. In later revelations, she made what's called the Sabbatine privilege, a promise so extraordinary that it sounds almost too good to be true. She promised that those who wear the scapular with devotion, live in chastity according to their state in life, and pray the Rosary daily, will be freed from purgatory on the first Saturday after their death. Picture this. You die, and if you need purification in purgatory, Mary herself comes down on Saturday, not years later, not decades later, but the first Saturday after you die, to personally escort you to heaven. It's like having the Queen of Heaven as your personal guide to eternal glory. Padre Pio understood this better than most. He once told a mother who was worried about her wayward son, "Get him to wear the brown scapular." Mary will not let him be lost. That mother followed his advice, and her son, who had been living a life far from God, died reconciled with the Church just months later. This isn't superstition, friends. This is about understanding that when the mother of Jesus makes a promise, she keeps it. But here's the thing that blew my mind when I first learned about this. It's not just about what happens after you die. People who wear the brown scapular report protection in this life too, miraculous escapes from accidents, healing from illness, protection from spiritual attacks. The question isn't whether these promises are real. Saints, popes, and millions of faithful Catholics throughout history have staked their eternal souls on them. The question is, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Speaking of promises and protection, there's something else Padre Pio held close to his heart alongside that brown scapular, his rosary. He called it the weapon and prayed it constantly, understanding that Mary's promises work hand in hand with our devotion to her. If you want to deepen your relationship with Our Lady and strengthen the spiritual protection in your life, I've prepared something special for you. It's an e-book called The Power of the Rosary with Padre Pio. Miracles, protection, and divine grace. This spiritual treasure will help you learn to pray the Rosary with greater devotion, discover the miracles experienced by those who've embraced its power, and receive a 30-day prayer guide with daily intentions to strengthen your faith. Plus, you'll get special prayers for protection, healing, and liberation that Padre Pio himself used. The Rosary was Padre Pio's greatest weapon, and it can be yours too. To download it, just click the link pinned in the comments below. Now let's dive into those 3 sacred promises I mentioned. Here's where things get absolutely incredible. When Our Lady of Mount Carmel made her promises about the brown scapular, she wasn't just offering comfort, she was extending the most powerful spiritual guarantee in human history. Let me break down these 3 promises that have been changing lives for centuries. The first promise, protection from eternal damnation. Whoever dies wearing this shall not suffer eternal fire. When Mary spoke these words, she was essentially saying, I've got your back for eternity. But here's what's fascinating. This isn't about magic. It's about relationship. When you put on that brown scapular, you're making a statement. You're saying, Mary, I want to live as your child. I want your protection. I choose you as my spiritual mother. And Mary responds with the most incredible promise a human being could ever receive: protection from hell itself. I heard about a man named Robert, a construction worker from Detroit who had fallen away from his faith for decades. His elderly mother kept begging him to wear her brown scapular, but he always refused. Then one day, facing a dangerous job on a high-rise building, something moved him to put it on, just to make his mom happy, he said. 3 hours later, scaffolding collapsed around him, but somehow he walked away without a scratch. That day changed everything. He told me later, tears streaming down his face, I felt protected by something bigger than myself. Robert returned to Mass that very week and wore his scapular until the day he died, peacefully, surrounded by family, whispering prayers to Mary. The second promise, the Saturday liberation, this is where your mind gets blown. The Sabbatine privilege means that if you die wearing the scapular with proper devotion, and you need time in purgatory for purification, Mary will come for you on the first Saturday after your death. Not the first month, not the first year, the first Saturday. Think about what this means practically. While other souls might spend years, decades, or even centuries in purification, you get the express lane to heaven. Mary herself becomes your personal escort. It's like having the Queen of the Universe as your VIP pass to eternal glory. Padre Pio used to say with absolute conviction, "Saturday is Mary's day." She works overtime on Saturdays. He believed so deeply in this promise that he would comfort grieving families by telling them, "Your loved one won't be waiting long." Mary keeps her appointments. The third promise, the grace of final perseverance. Here's the promise that doesn't get talked about enough, but it might be the most important of all. Mary doesn't just promise to save you after death. She promises to give you the grace to die well. This is what theologians call final perseverance, the ability to remain in God's friendship at the moment of death. You see, the devil's greatest strategy is to attack us when we're most vulnerable, in our final moments, when we're weak, confused, maybe even unconscious. But Mary promised that those who are devoted to her brown scapula will receive special graces to resist temptation and die in a state of grace. A hospice nurse named Sarah told me something that gave me chills. She said, "I can always tell when someone is wearing a brown scapula. Even in their final moments, there's a peace about them, a confidence. It's like they know they're not facing death alone." This is why Padre Pio clung to his scapula so desperately. This is why Pope John Paul II, even after the assassination attempt in 1981, begged the doctors not to remove his brown scapula during surgery. These weren't superstitious men. They were spiritual giants who understood the power of Mary's promises. But here's the thing you need to understand. These promises aren't automatic. They're not a get-out-of-jail-free card for people who want to live recklessly. Mary's promises are for those who genuinely want to live as her children, who strive for holiness, who seek to follow her Son, Jesus Christ. As Padre Pio himself declared, the scapula is not a magic charm, but a sign of consecration to Mary. The brown scapula isn't just a piece of cloth. It's a covenant between you and the Mother of God. Now let's talk about something that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. Purgatory. I know, it's not exactly dinner table conversation. But if you really want to understand why the brown scapula is so powerful, you need to know what it's protecting you from. Here's what most people don't realize about purgatory. It's not a Catholic invention or some medieval scare tactic. It's actually an act of God's incredible mercy. Think about it. Most of us die somewhere between sainthood and damnation. We love God, but we're not perfect. We've been forgiven, but we still carry the effects of our sins. Purgatory is God's way of saying, "I want you in heaven, but first, let me make you ready for perfect love." But here's where it gets intense. St. Catherine of Genoa, who had mystical visions of purgatory, described the pain there as greater than any earthly suffering. She said the souls there would gladly endure 1,000 years of the worst earthly torture if it would shorten their purification by even one moment. Can you imagine that level of spiritual agony? Padre Pio understood this reality better than most. During his mystical experiences, he was sometimes allowed to see souls in purgatory. He would weep after these visions, his stigmatized hands trembling as he described the intense longing these souls had for God, mixed with the unbearable pain of not yet being able to see him face to face. He once said, his voice breaking with emotion, "The souls in purgatory are like lovers separated from their beloved. Every moment apart feels like an eternity." But here's where Mary's promise becomes absolutely incredible. When she pledges to come for scapular wearers on the first Saturday after death, she's essentially saying, "I will personally cut short your suffering." Imagine being in that state of purification, longing for God with every fiber of your being, and then seeing the most beautiful woman who ever lived walking toward you with arms outstretched, saying, "Come, my child, it's time to go home." I met a woman named Margaret at a retreat who shared something that gave me goosebumps. Her husband, a faithful Catholic who wore his brown scapular for 40 years, died suddenly of a heart attack on a Thursday. Margaret was devastated, not just by grief, but by worry about his soul. But that Saturday night, she had the most vivid dream of her life. She saw her husband, radiant and joyful, standing next to a woman in brown and white robes. His face was glowing with a peace she had never seen in life. He looked at Margaret and simply said, "She kept her promise. I'm home." Margaret woke up with an inexplicable peace that lasted through her entire grieving process. Now, some people say, wait a minute. If Mary can free souls from purgatory, why doesn't she just free everyone? Here's the thing, Mary's promises are tied to our choices in life. The brown scapular represents a relationship, a commitment to live as her child. You can't live your whole life rejecting God and then expect Mary to override your free will at the moment of death. This is why Padre Pio was so careful to explain. The scapular is like a lifeline thrown from a ship to someone drowning, but you must grab hold of it to be saved. The beautiful thing is that Mary responds to even our imperfect efforts with perfect love. She sees our struggles, our failures, our sincere desire to do better, and she wraps us in her maternal protection. That's the real power of the brown scapular, not magic, but the love of the perfect mother who never abandons her children. So when Saturday comes, and you're in need of that final purification, you won't be alone. You'll have the Queen of Heaven herself coming to take you home. All right, let's get real for a minute. I know what some of you are thinking. This sounds amazing. Where can I get one of these brown scapulars? I'll put it on and I'm set for eternity. Hold on there, friend. Mary's promises are incredible, but they're not a spiritual lottery ticket. There are requirements, and they matter more than you might think. Padre Pio taught what he called the 3 pillars of authentic scapular devotion. Miss any of these, and you're building your spiritual house on sand instead of rock. Pillar 1, living in grace. First, and most importantly, you need to live in a state of grace. This means staying close to God through prayer, regular confession, and receiving the Eucharist. Padre Pio was blunt about this, his eyes flashing with holy fire. You cannot live like the devil and expect to die like an angel. The brown scapular isn't a shield that protects you while you live however you want. It's a uniform that shows which team you're on. I knew a man who wore his scapular for 20 years while living a double life. Faithful husband on Sundays, unfaithful on business trips. When confronted about his hypocrisy, he literally patted his scapula and said with a smirk, "Don't worry, I'm covered." That's not how this works. Mary's promises are for those who sincerely strive to follow her Son, not for those who want to game the system. Pillar 2, chastity according to your state. This one trips people up because they think chastity only applies to priests and nuns. Wrong. Chastity means sexual purity according to your calling in life. If you're single, that means abstaining from sexual activity. If you're married, that means faithfulness to your spouse. If you're religious, that means celibacy. Mary is pure, and she expects her children to strive for purity too. Pillar 3, daily prayer, especially the Rosary. Originally, scapular wearers were required to pray certain prayers throughout the day. The Church has simplified this to daily recitation of the Rosary. But here's the key. It's not about checking off boxes. It's about maintaining that relationship with Mary. Padre Pio called the Rosary the weapon, and he prayed it constantly, his fingers worn smooth from decades of use. When you commit to daily Rosary, you're committing to daily conversation with your spiritual mother. Now, Here's something crucial that might surprise you. Even if you fall short of these requirements, don't throw in the towel. Mary is a mother, and mothers have a way of working with their children's imperfections. Padre Pio taught with gentle compassion that sincere effort matters more than perfect performance. If you mess up, get back up. If you skip prayers, start again tomorrow. If you fall into sin, get to confession and keep trying. But here's what you absolutely cannot do. You cannot live in deliberate, unrepentant mortal sin and expect Mary's promises to magically kick in at death. That's presumption, and it's spiritually dangerous. The brown scapular guarantees Mary's special intercession, but it doesn't override your free will or God's justice. Think of it this way. Mary's promises are like a parachute, but a parachute only works if you're willing to pull the cord. If someone jumps out of a plane with a parachute but refuses to open it, they can't blame the parachute when they crash. The beautiful thing is that Mary makes it easier to live these requirements, not harder. Her grace helps you pray, helps you stay pure, helps you live in friendship with God. She's not just promising to save you at death, she's helping you live well right now. Here's something beautiful. Mary doesn't wait until you die to start protecting you. If you're wearing the brown scapular with genuine devotion, you'll start noticing her intercession in ways that will absolutely amaze you. The guardian angel effect. Padre Pio taught that scapular wearers have an extra layer of spiritual protection. He called it walking with invisible bodyguards. People report narrow escapes from accidents that should have been fatal, sudden changes in travel plans that saved them from disasters, and an almost supernatural ability to avoid dangerous situations. A police officer named Mike from Chicago shared this with me, his voice still shaking from the memory. He'd been wearing his brown scapular for 15 years when he got called to what seemed like a routine domestic dispute. Something inside him, he calls it a holy whisper, told him to wait for backup, even though he'd handled hundreds of similar calls alone. 20 minutes later, they discovered the suspect was armed with a shotgun and had been waiting in ambush. Mike told me, tears in his eyes, "I've never been one to believe in supernatural stuff, but I know Mary saved my life that day." Unexpected peace in storms. One of the most common signs scapular wearers report is supernatural peace during life's worst moments. When everyone around them is panicking, they find themselves strangely calm, able to think clearly and make good decisions. Lisa, a single mom from Texas, experienced this when her daughter was diagnosed with leukemia. She said, "I should have been falling apart, but instead I felt this incredible strength, like someone was holding me up. I could handle the doctor's appointments, the treatments, the sleepless nights. My family kept asking how I was staying so strong." Her daughter is now in full remission, and Lisa is convinced Mary carried her family through those dark months. Divine coincidences. Mary has a way of arranging coincidences that are anything but coincidental. Scapular wearers often find themselves in the right place at the right time, meeting exactly the person they need to meet, or receiving help just when they need it most. Protection from spiritual attacks. This one might sound dramatic, but it's real. People who wear the brown scapular report feeling protected from spiritual oppression, nightmares, and what can only be described as evil influences. Padre Pio taught that demons flee from those under Mary's protection. A veteran named Tony told me that after returning from deployment with severe PTSD and night terrors, his grandmother convinced him to wear her husband's old brown scapular. "The nightmares stopped within a week," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "I started sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. My therapist couldn't explain it, but I knew what had changed." The preparation. Grace. Perhaps most importantly, Mary prepares scapular wearers for death gradually, gently. They often develop a deeper prayer life, a stronger desire for the sacraments, and a growing detachment from worldly things. It's like she's slowly preparing their souls for the moment when she'll come to escort them home. These aren't just nice stories, they're evidence of Mary's maternal care. When you wear that brown scapular, you're not just wearing cloth. You're wearing a mother's love, and that love is active, powerful, and absolutely transformative. Friends, we've reached the end of our journey together, but this is really just the beginning. I want you to take a deep breath and let everything we've shared today sink into your heart. You've just learned about the most powerful spiritual promise ever made, a guarantee from the Mother of God herself that you never have to face eternity alone. Can you feel the weight of that truth? In a world where nothing seems certain anymore, where we're constantly worried about the future, about death, about what comes next, Mary offers you something nobody else can. Absolute assurance that she's got your back, both in this life and the next. That piece of brown cloth that Padre Pio treasured for 50 years, that he protected with his very life, isn't just fabric. It's a lifeline thrown from heaven to earth. It's Mary saying with all the love of a perfect mother, "You're my child, and I will never, ever abandon you." When you wear it, you carry with you 3 promises that have changed millions of lives: protection from hell, early release from purgatory, and the grace to die well. But more than that, you carry the love of a mother who has never lost a single child who truly wanted to be saved. Think about that for a moment. Mary's track record is perfect. For over 770 years, she has kept every single promise attached to that brown scapula. Every single one. Now picture this, the moment when your time on earth comes to an end. Your breathing becomes shallow, your heart begins to slow, and you feel yourself slipping away from this world. But instead of fear, instead of uncertainty, you feel a presence. A gentle hand touches your shoulder, and you hear the most beautiful voice you've ever heard saying, "Come, my beloved child, I've been waiting for you." And there she is, Mary, the Mother of God, just as she promised. Just as she came for Padre Pio, just as she's come for millions of her faithful children throughout history. This is your invitation to that same incredible promise. I want to leave you with the words that Padre Pio whispered every night, clutching his scapula close to his stigmatized heart. "Mary, my mother and my queen, you know my fears, my struggles, my desire to be worthy of your son. Wrap me in your brown scapula as you would wrap a child in a warm blanket. Protect me today, guide me tomorrow, and when my time comes to leave this world, be there waiting for me with open arms." If these promises have moved your heart today, share this video with 3 people you love. Maybe someone who's been struggling with faith, maybe someone who fears death, maybe someone who just needs to know they're not alone. Write in the comments, "Our Lady of Mount Carmel, I trust in your promises." Find a Catholic priest this week and ask to be enrolled in the brown scapular. Take that step of faith. Mary kept her promise to Padre Pio. She's going to keep her promise to you too. May Our Lady of Mount Carmel wrap you in her love and welcome you home to heaven. Amen. Have you ever walked into a home and felt an overwhelming sense of peace, almost supernatural, as if something invisible was protecting it? And in other homes, have you felt a heavy atmosphere, as if a dark force was pressing down on the place? This isn't your imagination, it's a spiritual sign, a warning. And Father Pio explained it clearly. The crucifix is the key to divine protection, but only when used correctly. Today, I want to share with you a powerful revelation from Father Pio, something very few people know, but that can completely transform your home, your family, and even your spiritual destiny. Get ready, because what you're about to discover isn't common devotion. It's a sacred teaching that can open the doors of heaven over your house, or leave it exposed if you ignore it. Many people have a crucifix hanging in their home. They placed it there because someone told them it was good, because it looks nice or out of habit. But according to Father Pio, that's not enough. The enemy doesn't fear the object, but the power that object activates when used with faith. he said. A crucifix is not a decoration. It's not a talisman. It's a spiritual tool of power that needs to be placed, treated, and activated correctly. When present and alive in the heart of the home, Father Pio taught that the crucifix acts as a constant source of grace, activating 3 immediate spiritual effects. First, spiritual protection. It creates an invisible barrier against enemy attacks, nightmares, arguments, tensions, and spiritual illnesses. Second, inner and physical healing. Looking at the crucifix and praying before it with sincere faith opens a healing channel that touches body, mind, and soul. Third, transformation of the environment. Places where there were fights become filled with peace. Areas of scarcity open to abundance. Broken family relationships begin to restore. But attention, many Catholics have crucifixes, but feel no change, no protection, no peace. Why? Because they commit one or more of the 7 serious mistakes that Father Pio constantly warned about. In a moment, I'll reveal each one so you can check if you're making them in your own home. If you believe in the power of Father Pio's teachings, write in the comments, Father Pio, protect my home. This simple act of faith can be the first step toward activating spiritual protection in your life. Before we continue with these powerful revelations, I want to let you know that we've prepared a special ebook called The Spiritual Secrets of Father Pio. This book contains powerful prayers, reflections based on his teachings, and practical advice to strengthen your spirituality. It's the perfect companion to today's teachings about the crucifix. You'll find the link in the comments below. Now let's continue with the first critical mistake that might be blocking divine protection in your home. A crucifix isn't just a religious symbol. It's not just a piece of wood or metal shaped into a sacred form. According to Father Pio, it's a living connection to heaven, a spiritual antenna that transmits grace and protection into your home. When properly used, it becomes a powerful spiritual tool that transforms the atmosphere around you. Father Pio often said, the crucifix is not just a reminder of Christ's love, but a channel through which his power flows. He described it as a spiritual shield, not because of the object itself, but because of what it represents and activates when approached with true faith. In his many years of spiritual ministry, Father Pio witnessed thousands of cases where a properly honored crucifix completely transformed homes and lives. The true power of the crucifix manifests in 3 remarkable spiritual effects in your home. First, it creates a shield of divine protection. Father Pio explained that angels gather where the crucifix is honored, creating an invisible barrier against spiritual attacks. This protection extends to nightmares, unexplained fears, tensions between family members, and even certain physical ailments with spiritual roots. The second effect is inner and physical healing. When we gaze upon the crucifix with faith, contemplating Christ's sacrifice, a healing connection forms. Father Pio taught that looking at the crucifix with devotion is like opening a direct channel to divine healing energy. This isn't just spiritual poetry. It's a practical reality experienced by countless faithful who have followed his teachings. The third effect is environmental transformation. Have you noticed how some places feel heavy, while others feel light and peaceful? The crucifix, when properly activated, transforms the spiritual atmosphere of your home. Areas once filled with arguments become peaceful. Places of financial struggle open to abundance. Family wounds begin to heal. As Father Pio said, where the crucifix reigns, darkness cannot dwell. John from Boston experienced this transformation firsthand. His family had been experiencing constant arguments, sleep disturbances, and a general sense of heaviness in their home. After learning about Father Pio's teachings, he properly blessed a crucifix, placed it strategically in his home, and began a daily practice of acknowledgement and prayer. Within weeks, the atmosphere changed dramatically. It was like someone had lifted a dark cloud from our home, he reported. Do we all sleep better, argue less, and there's a tangible sense of peace that wasn't there before? But here's the crucial truth Father Pio emphasized. Simply having a crucifix isn't enough. Many Catholics have crucifixes in their homes, but experience none of these powerful effects. Why? Because the crucifix, like any spiritual tool, must be used correctly to activate its power. Father Pio compared it to a powerful medicine taken incorrectly. It won't heal unless used as directed. Many people unknowingly block the power of the crucifix through common mistakes. These errors don't just render the crucifix inactive, they can actually leave spiritual doors open that should remain closed. In my years of ministry, I've seen how correcting these mistakes transforms homes almost overnight. The 7 serious errors Father Pio warned about are critical to understand if you want true protection for your family. In the next section, I'll reveal each one, so you can examine whether you've been unintentionally blocking spiritual protection in your own home. Remember, this isn't about superstition. It's about activating a genuine spiritual connection that Christ made available through his sacrifice, a connection that Father Pio understood deeply and taught with precision. Father Pio identified 7 critical errors that prevent the crucifix from fulfilling its divine purpose in your home. Understanding these mistakes is essential for activating true spiritual protection. The first mistake is using the crucifix as mere decoration. Many homes have beautiful crucifixes covered in dust, forgotten on a wall, or placed without intention. Father Pio warned that a crucifix treated as just another household object loses its spiritual power. The crucifix demands reverence, acknowledgement, and daily interaction. It's not the beauty or value of the object that matters, but the faith with which you honor it. The second mistake is placing it in incorrect locations. Hiding your crucifix on a high shelf where no one can see it, or in a rarely used room, prevents it from fulfilling its spiritual mission. Father Pio taught that the crucifix should be visible in areas where family life happens, where it can actively influence the spiritual atmosphere of daily activities. The third mistake is failing to have it blessed. Father Pio emphasized that a crucifix without a proper blessing is like a sword without an edge. Only a blessing performed by a priest activates its full sacramental power. This blessing connects the physical object to its spiritual purpose, making it a true instrument of grace. Many people hang crucifixes that have never received this essential blessing. The fourth mistake is lack of genuine faith. You might have a beautiful crucifix, perhaps made of silver or hand-carved, but if you don't believe in what it represents, it won't serve its purpose. Father Pio explained that the power doesn't come from the object itself, but from the faith that activates the divine presence it represents. Without this living faith, even the most expensive crucifix remains spiritually dormant. The fifth mistake is daily disconnection. Walking past the crucifix without looking at it, never praying before it, never making the sign of the cross. These habits weaken its spiritual influence. Father Pio taught that each acknowledgement of the crucifix, even a brief glance or gesture, strengthens its protective power in your home. These small acts of devotion accumulate, creating a fortress of spiritual protection. The sixth mistake is keeping it in poor condition. A broken, rusty, or crooked crucifix symbolizes neglected faith. Father Pio advised replacing damaged crucifixes respectfully, treating them with the dignity they deserve. If your crucifix is damaged, don't simply throw it away. Instead, bring it to your parish priest who can dispose of it properly according to church tradition. The seventh and most dangerous mistake is mixing it with esoteric objects. Never place your crucifix alongside amulets, strange symbols, or superstitious items. Father Pio warned that this creates spiritual confusion and weakens the crucifix's power. Its power is unique and needs no reinforcement from human inventions or other spiritual traditions. Elizabeth from Chicago made several of these mistakes without realizing it. Her home had a beautiful crucifix passed down through generations, but it hung in a dark hallway, rarely noticed or acknowledged. Her family experienced unexplained illnesses, constant arguments, and financial struggles. After learning about Father Pio's teachings, she had the crucifix blessed, moved it to their living room, and started a daily practice of acknowledgement. The change was dramatic, she shared. Within weeks, our home felt lighter. The constant tension between family members began to dissolve. We all sleep better now, and there's a sense of peace we haven't felt in years. These mistakes might seem small, but Father Pio explained that spiritual laws are precise. Just as physical laws like gravity operate whether we acknowledge them or not, spiritual laws govern the invisible realm that affects our daily lives. The proper use of the crucifix aligns your home with divine protection according to these spiritual principles. The good news is that correcting these mistakes is simple. You don't need special knowledge or complex rituals, just understanding and sincerity. By avoiding these 7 errors, you open your home to the full protective and healing power the crucifix was meant to provide. Father Pio often said, "The protection of heaven is available to all who sincerely seek it." The crucifix, when properly honored, becomes a powerful conductor of this protection. It transforms your home into a sanctuary of peace, healing, and divine presence. Now that you understand the mistakes to avoid, the next crucial step is knowing where to place your crucifix for maximum spiritual effect. Father Pio identified 5 strategic locations in your home that create what he called a spiritual blueprint of protection. In the next section, I'll reveal these powerful placement points that can transform your home's spiritual atmosphere almost overnight. Father Pio revealed that there are 5 strategic locations where the crucifix works with the greatest spiritual power. Placing crucifixes in these specific areas creates what he called a spiritual blueprint of protection for your entire home. Each location serves a distinct spiritual purpose, forming a complete shield of divine grace. The first strategic location is the main entrance of your home. Father Pio emphasized that the crucifix at your entrance acts as a spiritual filter, protecting the doorway through which people and energies enter your space. This placement creates an invisible threshold of protection, allowing blessings to enter while blocking negative influences. Ideally, place it above or beside your main door, where it's visible to everyone who enters. The second powerful location is the master bedroom. The crucifix here protects your spiritual rest and dreams. Father Pio taught that many spiritual attacks occur during sleep, when our conscious defenses are lowered. A crucifix facing your bed creates a shield of protection during these vulnerable hours. It should be positioned where you can see it from your bed, ideally on the wall opposite, so it's the first thing you see upon waking and the last before sleeping. The third crucial placement is in your living room or family gathering area. This space represents the heart of family relationships, where conversations happen and bonds are formed or broken. Father Pio explained that a crucifix here harmonizes words, attitudes, and even visitors who enter this central space. It should be positioned prominently, where everyone in the room can see it, creating a constant reminder of Christ's presence in your family interactions. The fourth strategic location is your kitchen. This might surprise many, but Father Pio specifically mentioned the importance of blessing the place where nourishment is prepared. He taught that where sustenance is prepared, heaven should be invoked. The kitchen crucifix blesses your food and invites abundance. It creates a spiritual connection between physical nourishment and spiritual sustenance. Place it where it's visible during food preparation, creating a natural opportunity for thanksgiving. The fifth location is your prayer corner or home altar. Here, the crucifix amplifies the power of your supplications, tears, and gratitude. Father Pio described this placement as creating a focal point of grace in your home, a designated space where heaven and earth meet with particular intensity. This doesn't need to be elaborate. Even a simple shelf or small table with your crucifix, perhaps accompanied by a candle and prayer book, establishes this powerful spiritual anchor. Where the crucifix is, there is Christ's gaze. Where his gaze is, there is power, Father Pio often said. These 5 placements aren't arbitrary. They're based on spiritual principles that Father Pio observed throughout his ministry. Together, they create a complete circuit of protection, covering the most important aspects of family life: entrance, rest, relationships, nourishment, and prayer. By strategically placing blessed crucifixes in these 5 locations, you're not just decorating, you're creating what Father Pio called a divine architecture in your home. This arrangement establishes a spiritual foundation that transforms your physical dwelling into a sanctuary of grace. But having crucifixes properly placed is only the beginning. Next, I'll share Father Pio's method for activating their power. Simple daily practices that transform these sacred objects from passive symbols into active channels of divine protection. These practical steps will help you experience the full blessing that comes from properly honoring the crucifix in your home. Simply hanging crucifixes isn't enough. Father Pio taught a specific method to transform them from passive symbols into active channels of divine power. This method involves intentional actions that activate their spiritual potential in your home. First, have your crucifix blessed. Father Pio considered this step essential. Take your crucifix to your parish or ask a priest to bless it with holy water. This sacred blessing initiates the object into its divine purpose. An unblessed crucifix, according to Father Pio, lacks its full spiritual authority. Next, place it at eye level. The crucifix should be visible, not hidden away. Father Pio taught that its placement should invite interaction and acknowledgement. If possible, orient it toward the east, symbol of the rising sun and the risen Christ, though this isn't essential if impractical in your home's layout. Make the sign of the cross each time you pass before it, even if it's just for a moment. This gesture activates what Father Pio called an invisible connection. This simple act reinforces the spiritual shield around your home with each repetition. Over time, these small gestures accumulate into a powerful protective force. Father Pio recommended praying before the crucifix at 3 p.m. or 3 a.m. He taught that during these hours, representing Christ's crucifixion, the veil between heaven and earth is thinner. Even a brief prayer during these times carries special power. If you can't pray at exactly these times, any consistent daily prayer before the crucifix still activates its protection. Light a candle when troubles arise. A light before the crucifix is what Father Pio called a silent supplication that attracts special protection. This simple act creates a physical representation of your faith seeking divine intervention. The combination of light and the crucifix creates a powerful spiritual focus during challenging times. Father Pio taught several daily practices to maintain this active protection. Begin your day by greeting the crucifix, saying, "Jesus, I trust in you. Bless my day and my family." Make the sign of the cross when passing before it. Pray briefly at 3 p.m. if possible. Consecrate your thoughts to Christ before sleeping. Gather your family once a week before the crucifix to pray together. Light a candle during moments of tension. Thank God for each blessing before the crucifix. Teach your children to say good morning and good night to it. Once a month, clean it respectfully with a clean cloth while saying a prayer renewing your faith. These practices aren't complex rituals, but simple acts of recognition and faith. They maintain an active relationship with what the crucifix represents, Christ's redemptive presence in your home. According to Father Pio, consistency in these small acts is more powerful than occasional elaborate devotions. The changes you'll experience often begin subtly. Perhaps you'll sleep better or feel more peaceful. There may be less tension at home. Over time, these effects deepen. Children become calmer, health improves, problems seem to find solutions, and faith grows. Father Pio said, transformation begins when the soul turns to the cross with sincerity. The crucifix doesn't just change environments, it changes hearts and destinies. This method doesn't require special talents or extensive theological knowledge. It simply requires sincere faith and consistent practice. By following these steps, you activate what Father Pio called the dormant power of the crucifix in your home. This isn't superstition, but a practical application of spiritual principles that have been proven effective throughout centuries of Christian tradition. In the next section, I'll describe the specific fruits and signs that indicate your home is experiencing the full protection that comes from properly honoring the crucifix. These manifestations will help you recognize the transformation occurring in your spiritual environment. As you implement Father Pio's teachings about the crucifix in your home, certain fruits and signs will begin to manifest. These changes signal that the spiritual protection is active and working in your environment. The first signs are often subtle atmospheric changes. Many people report that the home simply feels lighter, as if an invisible weight has been lifted. Rooms that once felt oppressive or heavy suddenly feel more open and peaceful. This change in atmosphere is one of the earliest indicators that the spiritual protection is beginning to work. Family dynamics typically show the next signs of transformation. Arguments become less frequent and less intense. Family members find themselves more patient with one another. Small irritations that once sparked conflicts seem to dissolve more easily. As Father Pio explained, when Christ's presence is honored through the crucifix, hearts naturally soften toward one another. Sleep patterns often improve significantly. Many people report deeper, more restful sleep with fewer disturbances and nightmares. Children who struggled with night fears find themselves sleeping peacefully. This is because, as Father Pio taught, the crucifix creates a protective shield during our most vulnerable hours of unconsciousness. Prayer begins to feel different, more connected and powerful. Many experience a newfound depth in their spiritual life. Prayers seem more focused, more heartfelt, and sometimes even more quickly answered. This is what Father Pio described as the thinning of the veil between heaven and earth that occurs when the crucifix is properly honored. Physical well-being often improves. While the crucifix is not a replacement for medical care, many report fewer minor illnesses and a general sense of improved health. Father Pio explained this as the natural result of reduced spiritual and emotional stress in the protected environment. Relationships outside the family may improve as visitors comment on the peaceful atmosphere. Some even notice unexpected opportunities arising, job offers, financial improvements, or resolved conflicts that seemed impossible before. These fruits aren't magical or instantaneous. They unfold gradually as the spiritual atmosphere of your home transforms. Some changes may appear within days, while deeper transformations develop over weeks or months of consistent practice. Father Pio assured that these changes aren't coincidental, but the natural result of aligning your home with divine protection. The crucifix doesn't create new blessings. It removes the obstacles that have been blocking the blessings already intended for you. In our final section, I'll share a powerful prayer of consecration and give you practical next steps to implement these teachings in your own home. Lord Jesus crucified, today I consecrate my home to your holy cross. May your blessed blood be our shield. May your peace be our atmosphere. May your light dispel every shadow. Look with compassion upon my family. Bless our doors, our words, our decisions. And may every corner of this house breathe your presence. We ask this through your redeeming love. Amen. Dear soul who has read this far, you now hold powerful knowledge in your hands. Don't let this seed fall on barren ground. Act. Examine the crucifix in your home. Is it blessed, visible, respected? If you don't have one yet, obtain one today. Apply the practices you've learned. Begin to see your home with spiritual eyes, because the battle isn't always visible, but the protection can certainly be felt. Father Pio taught us that spiritual transformation doesn't happen by accident. It requires intention, faith, and action. The changes you're seeking in your home environment begin with these simple steps we've discussed. Remember that a crucifix honored with sincere faith becomes a powerful channel of grace that transforms not just your physical space, but the hearts and minds within it. Start today with even the smallest step. Have your crucifix blessed if it hasn't been. Move it to a more prominent position where family members will see it regularly. Begin the practice of acknowledging it when you pass by. These simple actions set in motion powerful spiritual forces that Father Pio witnessed, transforming countless lives throughout his ministry. The world today is filled with challenges and negative influences that seek to enter our homes. The properly activated crucifix creates what Father Pio called a divine filter, allowing blessings to flow in while blocking harmful influences at the threshold. This protection becomes increasingly important in times of uncertainty and spiritual confusion. If this teaching has touched your heart, leave a simple thank you in the comments. This small act of faith, your little testimony, can help many other souls hear this message. By engaging with this community of light, you strengthen not only your own spiritual journey, but support others seeking the same protection and peace for their families. Remember, even one crucifix, honored with faith, can bring miracles where there was once chaos. The transformation may begin subtly, perhaps with better sleep or fewer arguments, but over time, the effects deepen and expand to every area of life. As Father Pio observed in countless homes, where Christ is honored, darkness cannot remain. Thank you for watching this video. If you found value in these teachings, please help us continue sharing Father Pio's wisdom by liking, sharing, and becoming a member of this channel. Your support allows us to spread faith and Father Pio's teachings to those who need them most. We're on this spiritual journey together, and as Father Pio said, the crucifix is the key that opens the doors of heaven's protection. May it never be missing from your home, nor from your heart. If you have a crucifix before you right now, place your hand upon it, close your eyes for a moment, feel the weight of the cross. That is the weight that Christ carried for you. Whisper softly, Jesus, may this cross protect my home. May your presence live here every day. Picture this. It's an ordinary Thursday morning in your city. Traffic flows, people rush to work, children walk to school. But something extraordinary is about to happen that most will never notice. In a few hours, the Creator of the universe will literally walk down your street. Not in glory, not with trumpets, but hidden under the appearance of bread, carried in a golden vessel, moving house by house through your neighborhood like a divine census taker checking on his people. This is the scandal of Corpus Christi that millions miss every year. They see pageantry where they should see presence. They witness tradition where they should recognize transformation. They watch a religious parade when they should be encountering the same Jesus who walked dusty roads in Galilee. Padre Pio knew this secret. The monk whose hands bled Christ's wounds for 50 years understood something about Corpus Christi that escaped even many priests. He discovered that this feast day wasn't just about honoring the Eucharist. It was about accessing a specific kind of grace available only once a year. Here's what Padre Pio realized. Most spiritual practices work gradually, like medicine taken daily, but Corpus Christi functions like spiritual surgery, intense, precise, capable of healing wounds that have resisted years of ordinary prayer. The proof? In 1958, a desperate mother brought her mute daughter to San Giovanni Rotondo 3 days after Corpus Christi. The child hadn't spoken a word in 7 years. Padre Pio simply asked, "What did you do on Corpus Christi?" When the mother replied, "Nothing special," he smiled and said, "That's the problem. Corpus Christi is never nothing special." He then taught the mother 3 specific practices. She returned the following year with her daughter. On the feast day itself, as they completed the 3rd practice, the 7-year-old girl spoke her first words. Jesus is here. Today, I'm revealing those same 3 practices that Padre Pio called the hidden architecture of divine visitation. These aren't complicated rituals requiring theological degrees. They're simple actions that create spiritual conditions for extraordinary grace. But here's what makes them different from other devotions. They work in sequence, each building on the previous one, creating what Padre Pio described as a perfect storm of receptivity in the human soul. If you're ready to transform this year's Corpus Christi from a beautiful tradition into a personal encounter that could change everything, write in the comments, "Jesus, come to my home." Your declaration of faith helps this message reach others who desperately need these spiritual keys. The first practice begins 24 hours before Corpus Christi in the most unlikely place, complete darkness. Before revealing these practices, you need to understand why Corpus Christi creates unique spiritual opportunities. Padre Pio explained it using an analogy that stunned his spiritual director. Imagine, he said, that Jesus lived in your neighborhood but never left his house. You could visit him any time, but he stayed inside. Then once a year, he decided to take a walk through your entire community, stopping at every street corner, blessing every home he passed. That walk changes everything, not just for him, but for the entire neighborhood. This is Corpus Christi's mystical reality. For 364 days, Jesus remains sacramentally present, but hidden in tabernacles. On this one day, he emerges, he processes. He visits publicly. The spiritual atmosphere of entire communities shifts when the Blessed Sacrament moves through their streets. But here's the crucial insight Padre Pio discovered. This divine visitation creates what he called grace windows, specific time periods when certain kinds of healing, guidance, and transformation become supernaturally accessible. These windows don't open randomly. They respond to human preparation, intention, and receptivity. The 3 practices work because they align your spiritual state with these grace windows, creating what mystics call divine synchronicity. The first practice exploits the most powerful window of all, the 24 hours preceding Corpus Christi. Padre Pio discovered that Jesus begins his visitation not when the procession starts, but when his people begin preparing their hearts to receive him. Modern believers often rush through religious celebrations without adequate preparation. We show up expecting grace without creating capacity for it, but extraordinary divine encounters require extraordinary readiness. That's why the first practice happens in complete darkness, in absolute silence, 24 hours before Corpus Christi. Padre Pio called it the inventory of need, and he considered it more important than attending the celebration itself. Many people ask me how to experience deeper intimacy with God in our noisy, distracted world. The answer often lies in practices that our spiritual ancestors understood, but we've forgotten. This darkness exercise is one of them, and it's been transforming lives for decades. Speaking of transformation, countless people have told me that discovering Padre Pio's complete spiritual teachings revolutionized their prayer life. That's why we created the Spiritual Secrets of Saint Padre Pio, a comprehensive collection of his most powerful practices, prayers, and mystical insights. These aren't available anywhere else in this format, and they perfectly complement what you're learning today. You'll find the link pinned in the comments. Now let me walk you through this first practice step by step, exactly as Padre Pio taught it to that desperate mother in 1958. Wednesday evening, as the sun sets before Corpus Christi Thursday, Padre Pio would instruct his spiritual children to perform what he called the inventory of need. This wasn't meditation or contemplation. It was spiritual archaeology, digging into the deepest layers of the soul to uncover what desperately needed divine attention. Most people, he explained, live on the surface of their spiritual lives. They pray about symptoms, not sources. They ask God to change their circumstances without examining what in their hearts created those circumstances. The inventory of need reverses this pattern. It requires complete honesty about your spiritual condition, but it also creates unprecedented openness to divine healing. Begin at sunset. Choose the darkest room in your home. No candles, no ambient light, complete darkness. This isn't arbitrary. Darkness eliminates visual distractions and forces you to encounter your interior world without external reference points. Sit comfortably but don't lie down. Keep a notebook and pen within reach, but don't write yet. The first phase happens entirely in interior silence. Start with this prayer, Padre Pio composed specifically for this practice. Jesus, tomorrow you will walk through my community. Tonight, I want you to walk through my heart. Show me what you see when you look at my life. Help me see myself as you see me, without illusion or self-deception. Then ask yourself 3 questions, spending at least 10 minutes with each one. First question, what am I carrying that I was never meant to carry? This targets burdens, resentments, responsibilities, and emotional weight that belongs to God, not you. Many people exhaust themselves carrying things Jesus explicitly offered to carry for them. In the darkness, without external distractions, these burdens become obvious. Teresa Martinez from Colombia shared her experience. I thought I was a generous person because I worried constantly about my adult children's problems. In the darkness, I realized I was actually trying to be their Holy Spirit. I was carrying anxiety that prevented them from learning to trust God directly. Second question, what am I avoiding that I know I need to face? This uncovers areas of spiritual avoidance, difficult conversations, necessary changes, uncomfortable truths about yourself or your relationships. The darkness creates safety for acknowledging what you've been running from. Third question, what do I need from God that I've been afraid to ask for? This is often the most revealing question. Many believers unconsciously edit their prayers, asking for what they think they should want rather than what they actually need. Corpus Christi's grace window responds to authentic need, not spiritual performance. After spending 30 minutes with these questions, turn on a small light and write down whatever emerged. Don't edit or spiritualize your responses. Write exactly what came to you in the darkness. The power of this practice lies in its radical honesty. When you inventory your actual spiritual condition, not your aspirational spiritual condition, you create precise targeting for divine grace. Maria Santos from Brazil described her breakthrough. I wrote down that I needed God to help me forgive myself for my son's suicide 3 years earlier. I had never admitted that I blamed myself, even in private prayer. Writing it down in the dark felt like lancing a spiritual wound that had been poisoning my relationship with God. Complete the inventory by writing this commitment. Jesus, tomorrow when you walk through my community, I give you permission to address everything I've written here. I trust you to heal what needs healing, change what needs changing, and provide what I truly need. Keep this notebook with you throughout Corpus Christi. You'll reference it during the second practice, when Jesus actually walks through your streets. This darkness exercise creates what Padre Pio called spiritual targeting. Instead of generic prayers for blessing, you've identified specific areas where divine intervention can create maximum transformation. The second practice activates this targeting system during the actual procession, when Jesus moves through your community, carrying all the grace necessary to address what you discovered in the darkness. The procession of Corpus Christi recreates one of history's most overlooked mysteries, what it felt like to walk alongside Jesus during his earthly ministry. Padre Pio understood that the Eucharistic procession isn't just a beautiful tradition. It's a time machine offering 21st century believers the same experience the apostles had walking through Galilee. But most people attend processions as spectators, missing the mystical opportunity entirely. They watch instead of participate, observe instead of encounter. The second practice transforms you from audience member to traveling companion of Christ. Padre Pio called this silent companionship, and he based it on a profound insight. During the procession, Jesus experiences the same emotions he felt during his earthly ministry: love for his people, sadness for those who don't recognize him, joy when he encounters genuine faith. The practice requires positioning yourself where you can walk directly behind the monstrance, close enough to maintain visual contact with the Blessed Sacrament throughout the entire procession. This isn't about convenience or comfort. It's about creating the proper spiritual geometry for intimate encounter. As the procession begins, establish what Padre Pio called interior silence. This doesn't mean external quiet. Processions involve music, prayers, and crowd noise. Interior silence means creating a space within yourself where only you and Jesus exist, regardless of external activity. Begin each step with this interior mantra: Jesus, I am with you. Not Jesus, be with me. That's petition. Not Jesus, help me. That's request. Simply, Jesus, I am with you. Pure companionship. The same presence the apostles offered during their 3 years of walking together. After establishing this rhythm, reference your inventory of need from the previous evening. As you walk, silently present each item to Jesus. Jesus, I am with you, and I'm carrying this burden I was never meant to carry. Jesus, I am with you, and I'm avoiding this situation you want me to. Jesus, I'm with you, and I need this thing I've been afraid to ask for. Don't elaborate or explain. Simply present each need like a child showing a parent a broken toy, trusting completely in their ability to fix it. Father Miguel Rodriguez from Peru experienced dramatic healing through this practice. I had been struggling with doubt about my priestly vocation for 2 years. During the procession, I simply walked behind Jesus and said, Jesus, I am with you, and I'm doubting my calling. I didn't ask for anything specific, just acknowledged his presence with my struggle. By the end of the procession, the doubt had completely disappeared. Not because I received answers, but because I remembered what it felt like to simply be with him. The third element involves practicing what Padre Pio called vicarious intercession. As you walk in silent companionship with Jesus, become aware of the people lining the streets. Look at them the way Jesus looks at them, with infinite compassion and understanding of their hidden needs. For each person you pass, offer this silent prayer. Jesus, you love this person more than they know. Meet their deepest need today. Don't try to discern what their need is. Trust Jesus to know and respond appropriately. This practice transforms you into what Padre Pio called a human monstrance, someone who carries and radiates Christ's presence to others. When you walk in authentic spiritual union with the Eucharistic Jesus, you become a channel for the same grace being carried in the golden vessel ahead of you. The most powerful aspect of silent companionship is its simplicity. You're not performing complex prayers or maintaining elaborate meditations. You're simply walking with Jesus the way his first disciples walked with him, present, attentive, available. Sarah Thompson from Texas shared her transformation. I had attended Corpus Christi processions for 15 years without ever feeling anything special. The first time I practiced silent companionship, I finally understood what the apostles experienced. It wasn't about miracles or visions. It was about the profound peace of simply being in his presence. As the procession concludes and returns to the church, don't let the experience end. The third practice extends this sacred companionship into your home. creating ongoing opportunities for the graces received during the procession to transform your daily life. The final practice addresses Corpus Christi's greatest tragedy, that Jesus' public visitation to your community typically ends when he returns to the church. Most people experience beautiful moments during the celebration, then return to ordinary life unchanged. Padre Pio discovered that the graces available during Corpus Christi don't automatically disappear when the procession ends. They remain available for 8 full days, the traditional octave of the feast, but only if you create ongoing opportunities for Jesus to continue his visitation in your personal life. The third practice, domestic visitation, transforms your home into an extension of the Corpus Christi procession, allowing Jesus to continue the healing work he began during the public celebration. Unlike the first 2 practices, this one requires physical elements. After returning from the Corpus Christi celebration, immediately create what Padre Pio called a threshold of welcome in your home. Choose a small table or surface in the area where your family spends the most time together, living room, kitchen, or family room. This location matters because the practice works through integration with ordinary family life, not separation from it. Cover the surface with the finest white cloth you own. White represents the purity of intention required for this practice. Place 3 items on the cloth: a crucifix or image of Jesus, a lit candle, and your inventory of need from Wednesday evening. The arrangement creates what Padre Pio called domestic sacred geometry, a visual reminder that Jesus desires to continue his Corpus Christi visitation in the intimate spaces of your daily life. Once established, gather your family, or stand alone if you live alone, before this domestic altar and speak these words. Jesus, you have walked through our community today. Now we invite you to walk through our home, our relationships, our daily concerns. We give you permission to continue your visitation here for the next 8 days. The power of domestic visitation lies in its rhythm of return. 5 times each day for 8 days. Approach this altar for brief moments of reconnection with Jesus' ongoing presence. Morning before breakfast. Jesus, walk through my responsibilities today. Midday, around lunch. Jesus, walk through my relationships and interactions. Afternoon, before dinner preparation. Jess. Each prayer takes less than 30 seconds, but creates a framework for recognizing Jesus' activity throughout ordinary time. The Rodriguez family from Guatemala has practiced domestic visitation for 12 years. The first year, we thought it was just a nice tradition. But by the 3rd day, we noticed our arguments were shorter, our patience longer, our gratitude more natural. It was like having an invisible family counselor who actually changed hearts instead of just giving advice. Most powerfully, this practice transforms your perception of daily life. Instead of seeing ordinary activities as separate from spiritual experience, you begin recognizing Jesus' presence in cooking, cleaning, working, resting, and relating. Keep a small journal near your domestic altar. After each visit, write 1 sentence describing how you noticed Jesus' presence since your last prayer. Over 8 days, you'll accumulate a record of divine activity that most people never recognize. Elena Vasquez from Mexico shared her journal entry from day 6. Jesus walked through my argument with my teenage daughter. Instead of escalating like usual, I heard myself asking what was really bothering her. She broke down crying and told me about bullying at school that I never knew about. The argument became healing. The practice concludes on the 8th day with a ceremony of gratitude. Gather your family before the domestic altar and read aloud from your journal, acknowledging all the ways Jesus continued his Corpus Christi visitation in your home. Then speak this final prayer. Jesus, your 8-day visitation to our home is complete, but we never want you to leave. Help us recognize your presence every day of the year, not just during special celebrations. Many families find this practice so transformative that they maintain their domestic altar permanently, continuing the rhythm of 5 daily visits throughout the year. When Padre Pio taught these 3 practices together, he called them mystical mathematics, a spiritual equation that creates predictable results when applied with sincere faith. Understanding how they integrate multiplies their individual power exponentially. The sequence creates what mathematicians call a compounding effect. Each practice amplifies the effectiveness of the others, creating total transformation greater than the sum of individual parts. The inventory of need, practice 1, functions as spiritual diagnosis, identifying precisely where divine intervention can create maximum impact. Without this preparation, the remaining practices lack focus and power. Silent companionship, practice 2, applies Jesus' healing presence to the specific needs identified during the inventory. This targeted application explains why people experience such dramatic breakthroughs during processions when they've properly prepared. Domestic visitation, practice 3, extends and integrates the graces received during the procession, allowing profound spiritual experiences to transform ordinary daily life rather than remaining isolated peak moments. But the real power emerges in the connections between practices. Your Wednesday evening inventory creates spiritual targeting for Thursday's procession. Your Thursday procession experience provides evidence of Jesus' response to your inventory. Your 8-day domestic visitation allows integration of these graces into permanent life changes. Dr. Carmen Rodriguez, a Catholic therapist who has studied Padre Pio's practices for 20 years, explained, "What makes this system so effective psychologically is that it engages all 3 components, or people who complete all 3 practices consistently report what Padre Pio called the 3-fold fruit: clarity about God's will for their lives, confidence in their ability to access divine help when needed, and communion with Jesus that transforms ordinary time into continuous prayer." The integration also creates what he called mystical momentum. Each year's practices build upon previous year's foundation, creating spiritual growth that compounds annually. 5th-year practitioners report entirely different experiences than first-year practitioners, not because the practices change, but because their capacity for receiving grace expands. Most importantly, this system transforms Corpus Christi from an annual celebration into an ongoing way of life. The practices teach you to recognize and respond to Jesus' presence throughout the year, making every day a kind of domestic Corpus Christi. As we conclude this journey into Padre Pio's hidden wisdom, consider the extraordinary gift you've received today. You now possess the same 3 practices that have transformed thousands of lives over the past 70 years. The same spiritual technologies that healed that mute child in 1958 are now available to heal whatever needs healing in your life. But knowledge without application remains powerless. These practices work only when lived, not when merely understood. This year's Corpus Christi could be the turning point where your spiritual life moves from admiration of God to actual encounter with Him. Think about your current spiritual struggles, the burdens you carry, the avoidances you maintain, the needs you haven't dared voice. Now imagine experiencing Corpus Christi with complete honesty about these realities, walking in genuine companionship with Jesus as He addresses them, then creating 8 days of ongoing domestic visitation where healing can deepen and integrate. That's not fantasy. That's precisely what these practices create when applied with sincerity and faith. Padre Pio's final words about Corpus Christi were these: "This feast exists because Jesus refuses to remain distant from human struggle. He comes to our streets, enters our homes, walks through our ordinary concerns, but he can only heal what we honestly acknowledge and courageously present to him. Your inventory of need begins Wednesday evening. Your silent companionship happens during Thursday's procession. Your domestic visitation extends for 8 transformative days. Every element is within your reach, requiring nothing except honesty, faith, and consistency. If these teachings have stirred hope in your heart, share your commitment in the comments. Write, "I will practice all 3. If you're ready to experience Corpus Christi as spiritual breakthrough rather than religious tradition. Your declaration encourages others facing similar spiritual hunger. More importantly, if you know someone struggling with burdens they can't release, doubts they can't resolve, or needs they can't voice, share this video with them. Sometimes the greatest act of love is introducing someone to practices that could transform their relationship with God forever. Subscribe and activate notifications so you never miss teachings that can deepen your spiritual journey. We're building a global community of people committed to living the saints' wisdom in practical, life-changing ways. But remember Padre Pio's promise. When we approach Jesus with radical honesty and genuine faith, we never remain unchanged. Let this Corpus Christi prove that promise in your own life. The practices await, the grace windows will open. Jesus will walk through your community and desires to walk through your life. The only question remaining is, will you walk with him?